This account from Mirela reveals a profound and transformative experience she had after a surgery, in what is known as a near-death experience, or NDE. She describes a moment when, after leaving her body, she found herself in an environment that challenged conventional understanding of reality. She witnessed a sequence of events and visions, including interactions with a man whom she somehow felt she knew, and perceptions of a distinct, non-material world, yet one that resembled the place we live. According to her, this experience not only dispels the myth of death, but also brings a new perspective on what our fate is after the life we live here, and the personal transition between worlds that we cannot perceive. Hello, I'm Marcus, and it's a pleasure to welcome you here to Beyond the Life We Live. I hope you feel at home and absorb the lesson from the story we are about to tell. While you're here, please like and subscribe to the channel, as it is very important to us, helping us bring new and impactful stories to you. Mirela is in the healthcare field with a background in human resource management. She went through an experience that she still remembers clearly, as if it had happened yesterday. At the time, she was suffering from endometriosis, though she didn't know it. She experienced intense pain and during one episode fainted from the pain and was taken to the emergency room of a hospital. Prior to this, an examination had indicated the presence of an ovarian cyst. Upon arriving at the hospital, she underwent emergency surgery. After the procedure, she began to experience frequent urination, which prevented her from leaving the house. Seeking answers, she consulted another doctor who recommended a new ultrasound 20 days after the surgery. During the exam, the doctor found a fibroid. Terrified, Mirela thought she had cancer, believing that the previous surgeon had discovered the disease and chose not to tell her, but rather informed her family. In tears, she was overwhelmed by fear, while the doctor performing the ultrasound suggested she return to her physician for a more detailed examination. Moved by Mirela's desperation, the doctor offered to perform the exam right there, avoiding the lengthy process. The diagnosis of a fibroid was confirmed, which led her to cry. Her sister-in-law, who was with her, also became emotional, sharing the fear that it might be something more serious. The doubt was only resolved after consulting 5 doctors when she was finally convinced it was not cancer. The last doctor revealed cautiously that there had been a small error in the previous surgery, but for ethical reasons did not provide details. He simply said that life should go on, and now was the time to focus on recovering her health. He mentioned the possibility of another surgery, but not immediately, as the body was still recovering from the recent procedure. Mirela continued seeking answers, even after being told it was not cancer, but the doubt persisted. She was then referred to a doctor who was the director of the hospital where she had the second surgery, and he recommended a laparoscopy, a minimally invasive surgical procedure performed under anesthesia. On the day of the procedure, she clearly remembers the anesthesiologist saying he was going to put her to sleep. Shortly after, she fell asleep, and that's when her near-death experience began. The sensation she had was that immediately afterward, she was in another place, different from the room she was initially in. She found herself in a room similar to an ICU, softly illuminated, with 3 patients. The room was white, and on the other side, there were 2 nurses talking in low voices. Although the patients were separated by partitions, Mirela could see everything around her. At that moment, Mirela realized she had left her body and approached the bed of one of the patients, viewing the situation from a different perspective than usual. Then, Mirela found herself in a new environment. She did not know how she got there, but she was in a large space that resembled a park with people. There, she noticed the presence of someone who came to talk to her. The sun was in the sky with an indescribable color and brilliance, reflecting in an amazing way. As she watched, she noticed that the sun seemed to set, creating a color spectacle that resembled a rainbow, but was the sun itself. The scene was breathtaking and hard to describe, evoking a deep feeling in her. She observed the sun, or what appeared to be the sun, without seeing it directly, but noticed that the colors faded as night approached. The trees around were very tall and imposing, with wide trunks and leaves on top. The streets seemed to separate the place where Mirela was from another place with a high density of people, which appeared enchanting. She then moved to the next moment. Despite her joy at seeing the young man, whom she felt she knew, she noticed he had a look of concern and anguish, mixed with other emotions she could not clearly identify. Although he looked visibly worried, she was so enchanted by the sense of lightness, the environment, and his presence that she did not question his emotions. The feeling of being with him was strong and positive, despite the worried expressions he conveyed. Mirela was so captivated by being in that place that she did not question his expression of concern, feeling a sadness and anguish in him, as if it were not the right time for her to be there. They walked side by side, but Mirela was constantly distracted by that dazzling world. The young man then began talking to someone, and she realized he was trying to find a place to accommodate her, as if he were looking for a shelter or a new home for her. There, the only thing she could focus on was her amazement at experiencing an indescribable happiness, a feeling so intense that it seemed impossible to put into words. Then the young man said return with a communication that was only mental, without spoken words. And the most amazing thing is that she had no time to question or respond, as when she realized it, she was already back in reality. She woke up in the hospital, confused and disoriented, trying to understand what had happened, not knowing how she ended up there. Today, she recalls all the details of the experience, including the smell of the place, which, despite the bright and warm sun, was not uncomfortable. There was no heat or cold that bothered her. She reflected on everything she had lived through and the intense feeling of happiness she experienced during that time. She describes the experience with vivid detail, including the smell, which made her question her sanity as it seemed disconnected from the reality of the room she was in. Today, she says she has lost the fear of death and now sees it as a transition, not as suffering. To her, dying is comparable to a journey where you sleep and, upon waking, are in a new place. The experience made her understand that death is not a punishment, but a change of state, almost like a change of scenery. Mirela's view is that, even outside the physical body, consciousness can have its own distinct existence, capable of exploring and experiencing realities that are not limited to the physical.